as being an act of dissent. So all protests could fall foul of this.
It could be. I mean, why don't we have, why haven't all these pro-Palestinian protesters been thrown into jail? Well, I mean, the reason they haven't been is because, for the most part, they're doing something perfectly legitimate, which is, protesting peacefully for their cause. So if there are people in that crowd who are inciting violence, well, the powers are there to arrest them.
Totally agree. Do you have... I am mindful of what you said right at the beginning, the caveat that this is one newspaper's report, the details are scant. But the fact that the only named groups that I have that could fall foul of this idea, of this proposal, are the Muslim Council of Britain and Palestine Action Amend. I mean, that's... considering the sort of febrile times in which we find ourselves, that in itself seems quite an interesting selection of groups.
Well, I don't know enough about those particular organisations to comment on them, and also don't know that those are the three that the Guardian have picked out to quote. Of course, it may be that there are more in the actual documents which are cited as examples. But, generally, as I say, if any of those organisations or other organisations are inciting violence, then the powers are there already to deal with them. And, why would you want extra powers to act against people who you feel are non-violent protests? Well,
when our Home Secretary characterises a peace march as a hate march, then I can start to see how we can find ourselves in the situation that the Observer is outlining. If you could say, let's bring in Martin Abrams, if I may, from Momentum. Good morning to you, Martin.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm just thinking, Momentum, whether you would fall foul of this if it ever became legislation. I suppose it's a possibility, isn't it?
Well, I can't see why. I mean, we're a legitimate political pressure group. But, the real danger on your programme here is that there's a danger of agreement breaking out between me and the other guest, because it is completely ridiculous. And what we're seeing is the government attempting culture war issues once again to drive a wedge in between and put a bit of a chilling effect towards what are entirely legitimate protests against what is happening in Gaza at this moment in time. And I'm very proud to say that I've attended many of the protests protesting the bombardment in Gaza, and they have been entirely peaceful. I think there've been more. I think on average, there's more arrests at a football match than a protest. And the last one had 500,000 people attending. So this is just the government's way to drive a bit of a wedge into what is a very peaceful movement for people, essentially centred around a call for peace. And that is the most absurd things about this. For Suella Braverman to describe these marches as hate marches is just so beyond the reality of what they actually are. It could not be further from the truth. And one of the things that I would like to highlight, so I'm a Jewish Labour Party member, and I've been on these marches with hundreds, if not thousands, of other Jewish people who are all calling for peace in the Middle East. The horrors that were committed on the 7th of October, were absolutely abhorrent, unspeakable horrors. But as I've said all along in this conflict, one crime does not justify another crime, and that is why hundreds of thousands of people have been out on the streets every single weekend. We've seen direct Mark, civil disobedience.
Do you feel as a Jewish man? When you read mainstream media stories that they tend to portray the sort of Jewish attitude towards what's going on, Israel versus Hamas? The mainstream media just portrays there's just one thought that.
Absolutely,
and it's far more nuanced.
That in itself is leaning towards anti-Semitism, because we are not one homogenous mass. There is a tradition within Judaism to stand up against oppression, to stand up against injustice, and that is what myself and many hundreds of Jewish people across this country have been doing throughout these recent weeks, and we will continue to do so.
Martin,
so for the government to try and criminalise that is an absolute disgrace.
Martin, thank you. I just want to go back to Ross. I started this programme today sort of